Welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is here with us. Thank you.
Good morning.
I was saying to you when you came in, I said, I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks, and I miss you when I don't see you. You're such a light. For people who don't know, you are an amazing expert in the field of autism, having worked in this field for almost 40 years now, right?
40 years.
Yeah, 40 years this year.
Yeah.
Insane amount of time, and it does not show on your face.
It is an insane amount of time.
It is an insane amount of time, but we are the beneficiaries of that because Dr. Granpeesheh has been working in this field for that long and has worked with such a wide variety of individuals from very young babies up through senior citizens, has worked with families. I think if there's anything to be seen, she has seen it. And has probably helped to deal with it. And so she has such a breadth of information that she's willing to share with us in this free format. We do like to remind you that no expert, even an expert of her caliber, can give individual specific advice in this format. It just doesn't lend itself to that because you need an opportunity to meet with the individual and get to know more. But having said that, you know, if you write into us on any of the formats that we have available to you and make your question as specific as possible, she can impart some of the knowledge of what she has seen over the years. And what you guys have written back to us over the years and said is that it helps you to make decisions, to know what to look at next. It's so enlightening. The last time you were on the show, you completely, made my head go poof. I don't even remember what it was, but I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. And so we all learn at your feet, and it's a wonderful thing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And my apologies. I think I've missed the last 2 shows or something.
It's been a couple of weeks.
3, yeah.
But we always know, part of our deal here is that you have other things that you have to attend to that have to do with children and adults who are on the spectrum, and we know that your time is valuable and that we have to be fluid with your time.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
It's just a pleasure when you're here.
Thank you. It's always nice to be here.
We miss you when you're not here, but we know that you're up to all good things when you're not here, so it's all good. Okay, so I want to start with some questions that we had that people wrote in emails on our Facebook page, because there are lots of different ways to get in touch with us, and sometimes I love our live feature because you can be anonymous, but sometimes you don't get to write as much detail, so sometimes folks will email me or send us an email on our Facebook page. The first 2 questions are questions that I promised people on the Facebook that came in over the week. Right. Okay, so the first one, Philly suburb mom here. My 5-year-old with ASD has been in a mainstream pre-K program for the last 2 years. I had an epic failure when it came to his first day at his new daycare, and I don't want to repeat that for kindergarten. I don't think I prepped him enough. I thought because he was going to the daycare center at my church that I didn't have to worry about the transition. But boy, was I wrong. Screaming, hitting, throwing himself down. Oh boy. What should I be doing for prep? Every piece of advice would be welcome. I was told I couldn't walk in with him and that I have to leave him at the curb. That freaks me out. Thanks for all your help and support. Sending you a hug, first of all, because that's a lot of loss of control, saying goodbye at the curb,
time, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a tough one. Like so what I would do, you basically, I would go in right now, and good job to you. Wow, I just admire parents so much you're prepping for something that's going to happen in 3 months or 4 months, which is good for you. That's amazing.
Isn't that wonderful?
It's truly amazing. And I'm guessing that you must have had a really bad experience with preschool or daycare that you want to avoid that.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that you meet with the school, first of all, and ask them to help you. Tell them all of this. Tell them that he had an absolute horrible transition into daycare and you don't want to repeat that, and you want to make sure that the transition is easy for him and that he has a successful experience. And trust me, they want the same thing. They would also want him to be successful. So the way to do it is to find out exactly what his first week is going to look like. And that means, when I say exactly, I mean from, for instance, dropping off at the curb to everything that is going to take place that first week. So you make a schedule and you write day 1. He will be dropped off at the curb. Somebody will take him in. what is the exact thing that will happen, not just activities, exact things. So like put your coat away, put your lunchbox in a cubby maybe, go find your name on the wall. I don't know, like you need to really go through it with the teacher. And once you have an exact, so for every, you'll have a schedule which will have all those specific things, and then you'll have a 1 page per day that will say exactly what he's going to go through. Now you need to be able to replicate that for him without anyone else being there. And what you're going to do is a sort of shaping procedure where you're going to gradually fade yourself out. So let's say the first part of this is actually handing him over to someone. And the way to do it is simply park your car. They have to be cooperative with this. And they come with the person or a person, hopefully the same person who would be naturally taking him, will come, and the first day you will go with them and take him in, and gradually, as you repeat this day after day, every aspect of what you're doing will decrease and every aspect of what they're doing will increase.
You're talking about over the summer,
over the summer, right now.
Not the first day.
Yeah, I'm talking about right now.
Yeah.
And this is something that's why I'm saying they need to be engaged with this plan. And this will take easily a couple of weeks of practice. So I would take it very seriously, and they should take it very seriously. And you basically are going to turn yourself from being the primary, I'm trying not to use technical language, the primary stimulus or the primary person that he pays attention to being the shadow. So you will gradually, first you'll be in the lead, and then you'll gradually fade yourself out completely, both verbally and physically. So you'll say less and you'll distance yourself more from the whole thing. Ideally by the end of the first week, he can actually get out of the car and walk in, as long as you're standing outside your car and looking at him walking away. Yeah. But all of that has to happen by them gradually taking over. And don't forget, the whole key to ABA is reinforcement. So everything he accomplishes, every step. So for instance, taking someone else's hand, even if he has your hand as well, should get a reinforcer. And that could be a smaller thing like, good job, wonderful, that's awesome. And as he becomes more independent of you and more relating to them, he should get actual food reinforcer if possible. So in other words, when he goes inside, let's say the first time he's able to let go of your hand and actually go inside his classroom, he should absolutely get a lollipop or something that is very rewarding from them. They should be the people who deliver the reinforcers. And if he has things that he particularly loves, like let's say an iPad, or how old is he? He's 4, I think, 5. If he has like an iPad or music or things that he likes, make sure that they are present for him in the classroom. Make sure that you share some of this stuff with the teachers in terms of how to make the classroom a positive experience for him. So, and the biggest thing is for them to realize that he can pretty much do anything. He just needs transition, he needs clear instructions, short instructions, he needs modeling, he needs a lot of reinforcers for everything that takes place. And they need to understand that if it's a big failure if they let him fail. They need to prompt him and reward him a lot in the beginning, and then so that he never fails, so that he's always successful. And gradually they can reduce their prompting and their modeling of things, and gradually they can reduce the reinforcers. Because with our kids, when they fail, it isn't as clear what they're getting from the situation. What they do end up getting for sure is a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. We have to just avoid failure wherever possible, because it just makes things a lot more complicated.
Absolutely. Now, I just want to piggyback on, because that's all in a perfect world, great advice. if the school is cooperative.
Right.
But it's summer already, and a lot of times a lot of the people have bugged out for school, and
Right.
or some schools are going to say to you, well, all of our people are gone. We'll do that the first week that he gets here. And they just throw the kids in, and they think of, school administrators think of the first 6 weeks as a wash.
Right.
Now, as a former teacher and as a warrior mom, I do not think of the first 6 weeks as a wash.
Right.
I think as the first 6 weeks as setting us up for success.
Yes.
What you were saying, and not creating a mess.
Right.
So if the school is like, oh, we don't have anybody here who can do that, and the buildings are all locked, and I'm sorry, that's uncomplimentary to them, but I find that sometimes they're that way. But anyway, if they say that to you, then just know that there are other ways that you can work it. They're probably having summer school there. Find out when they are and say, well, can I just walk him in the gate, practice, so that you can do it then.
Yep.
Also, call and find whoever is your case manager at school, whether it's the school psychologist or sometimes it's an RSP, and get them on board and say, look, I know my kid, and this is what we have to do to make this happen.
Right, right.
And document all of it so
Yep.
that you're keeping a record of it. An email is okay to do that. But even if you have a conversation with them, you send the email afterwards, as per our conversation today, when you said this
Right,
and I said
right.
that, so it's all documented. And if they won't give you a person, have one of your ABA team
Yeah.
help you to do it.
Absolutely.
And say to the school, they have to be the person that takes him in on the first day. And if school refuses, make them do it in writing.
Yeah, very good advice. Definitely, if they don't give you the person, you can try other people that you already know as a substitute who's going to do the same things. But be pushy about it,
Oh, yes.
because I don't think, because this, unfortunately, Shannon and I are a little bit, both of us are a little bit like, we've had so many bad experiences with schools who are just too busy to take care of.
Are you saying we're cynical?
Yeah. Jaded is the word I was looking for. We're a little jaded, both of us. We've sat in many, many IEPs over the years. But what I would suggest is, because what happens in the schools is they will not help you in the beginning, and then when the child fails, they will blame you,
Yeah.
which is
Oh, yeah.
ridiculous, So it's like I told you guys, that's why Shannon is saying, please document everything. But I think none of us want to have the pleasure of going back to the school and saying, I told you so.
Right.
What we really want is just for our kids to be successful. So the more practice you put into it, and the more you try to replicate, and the more so what you're doing is you're familiarizing him, you're replicating the process and the location, and the familiarity always reduces anxiety. So if he knows the classroom better than any other kid, if he knows the bathrooms, if he knows the procedures, the schedule, if he knows the material, everything, if he has familiarity, he's going to have less anxiety. If he's walked that path 50 times, he's going to have less anxiety, no question about it. All that. And then also make sure they reinforce him. And he should be okay if you do all of those things, with or without them. Obviously, with them, it would be much better, but with or without them. And the last thing I want to say is be pushy about it. If they are open, make sure they're paying attention to you. Be pushy about it.
Oh yeah, there's nothing like being pushy. And they will eventually see it your way when your kid succeeds, and that will help other kids along the way.
Absolutely.
Just even on the reinforcement thing, one of the things that we did for Jem, we made Disney dollars.
There you go.
We took little fake dollars.
Absolutely.
And we had mommy money and daddy dollars that were Disney dollars. And so they were Disney dollars, and they had a picture of daddy, so that was a daddy dollar, or mommy and a mommy money. And we printed them in different rainbow colors and gave them to them.
Awesome.
They would give him $1 for anything, so that it didn't cost them anything. Our kid wasn't good on sugar, so we couldn't give him a sugar thing. But he knew when he got a certain number of those that we would go to Disneyland.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that he could trade those in.
Exactly.
And he learned how to counting his Disney dollars. So that reinforcement thing, but it has to be something
that works for him.
Yes.
And whether he's capable of a token system like this, or he's not, and you just want to give him a reinforcer every time. It doesn't matter, or sticky faces or whatever, stickers on his hand, or just keep a book, whatever. You definitely need a reinforcer system in there.
Absolutely. Now, before we go to break, a really quick Facebook question that came in. Jessica wants to know, do you have a probiotic that you would recommend?
Yeah, so my favorite probiotic is VSL3.
Okay.
And it's very, you have to order it online, VSL3. And it is expensive, but it is, I think it is, I want to say 450 billion cells. So they come in little packets like this. It is amazing stuff.
We did like 6 months of Gem on that. I don't know why we then switched. I also like the ones at Claire Labs and at Kirkman Labs.
There's nothing as strong as VSL3.
Okay.
That's the strongest on the market. So if you have a very young child, then you need to give half dose initially, because it's for people with celiac and Crohn's and so on.
Thank you for putting that out there for all of us. That's back on my radar. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back with the other question that came in about tooth grinding, and then we'll be looking at more questions that you guys are sending in. So stick with us.
Hi guys, welcome back to Smarty. Today I have a special guest with me. What the heck? She's missing.
Here I am!
And what's your name?
Mackenzie,
And what are we doing today?
making sidewalk paint.
And how do we do that?
I have no idea.
So, the materials we'll be needing
Are 2 cups of cornstarch, 1 cup of cold water, 4.5 cups of boiling water. Be careful. A mixing bowl, a spoon, markup, and food coloring.
So, the first step we're gonna do is we're gonna take our 2 cups of cornstarch and put it in the big bowl.
Yes.
Can you do that for me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It's alright, I'll help you. Step 2, you're gonna put the cold water into the bowl.
Cold water to the bowl.
Good job. Step 3, we're gonna stir it with a big spoon. Good job. You're gonna keep stirring it until it's all the way mixed together. So the next step is adding the boiling water. That's a little dangerous for her, so I'll be doing it myself, 1 cup at a time, stirring it together. You gonna keep an eye on me?
Yes.
So once we're done stirring the cornstarch water, we're gonna start making our dyed paint. So what are we gonna do?
We're gonna put in the dye,
Okay.
and we're gonna put in the sparkles.
All right, let's do it. I'm gonna move this out of the way. All right, it's all you, Mackenzie. So the more food coloring you use, the brighter it's gonna be.
Ooh.
So let's put the sparkles in.
Now we're gonna put the cornstarch in the jar.
All right, do you wanna stir that up?
It looks pretty. We're gonna make a few more colors, and we're gonna go paint on the side.
See all the colors in the sky tonight.
Are you excited?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Love is the truest state of mind. Now can you see me? Can you see me? Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, and she's answering your questions. I'm going next to a question that we had that came in on our Facebook page via email. And the person writes in, "Hi, I'm hoping you guys talk about tooth grinding, strategies to fix that bad habit, nose humming as a way of stimming as well. My son is 4 with level 2 autism, and teeth grinding and nose humming are his bad habits." Now, I had written back to her and said we would try to cover it. She said, just to add that my son grinds his teeth mostly during ABA therapy and sometimes while watching TV or reading his books. And the nose humming is super loud when he is near 2 adults talking or he does it when he's reading his books. Thank you. The nose humming is loud when he cannot sleep also. The scary part is I was looking back and posting this is that most of this conversation for both of us was at like 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning. Both of us need a sleep adjustment.
Honestly.
This mom and I was like, oh, we are not sleeping.
Honestly.
So,
honestly. Sometimes
yeah.
are you the same as I am, Shannon, where like it's, I don't know, it's just, I don't get any alone time.
Oh, yeah.
So therefore, even if it's midnight, I don't want to sleep.
Right.
Because it's my only alone time.
Yes.
And I'm like, it's midnight. I should go to sleep. But no, I want to read this. I want to do that. It's crazy.
And is it just me? It feels like that kind of alone time at night, it is like this pile of riches that is only for young people. That's how I look at it. I'm like, I can remember when I was 27 and it was like, it's midnight. I've got hours of things I can do now.
It's so true.
And you just don't get that.
Yeah, well, I'm about to get that.
Are you?
Because, well, my youngest just graduated high school, right? So,
Yes.
like, they're all... Nikki's going to be off to UCLA,
so you're gonna
and
have,
Sonny's going to be at Chapman.
It's going to
Charlie's
be
gonna
8
be
o'clock
here
at
for,
night and you're going to have free time.
Charlie's going to be around for one more year, but yeah.
That's not going to feel good either, though.
I know.
Oh, okay. In any case, let's talk about teeth grinding. We digress.
All right. So there's two behaviors that you're mentioning, but they're happening in several different settings. So they very likely have different functions. So a behavior can have multiple functions. Now, the first thing that comes to mind, I have lots to tell you, but the first thing, well, several things. Not to be like, I don't want to start by correcting anyone, but there's always two ratings in autism. No one is a level 2. A level 2, the number level 2, which basically also shouldn't be, it has to do with either the social communication or the repetitive self-stimulatory behaviors. So everybody has two numbers.
But you see clearly that all of our viewers write in and say only one number.
Yeah,
and I think that that's happening because the doctors
are wrong.
telling them.
Also
they're just saying
possible.
2 as if maybe it's 2 in both or not bothering to tell them. I don't think the doctors are informing them.
Or knowing how to do it correctly,
Well, there's
which
that
is also
too.
very possible. So basically, you could be a 2-1, a 2-3, a 1-2, a 1-1, a 1-3. Like, it's always two numbers. So I will make the assumption that your child is mid-functioning across the board. Anyway, having said that, several things. So teeth grinding during ABA. Don't tell the ABA therapist not to accept his response if he's teeth grinding, and he has to repeat it without teeth grinding first. While watching TV or reading his books, turn off the TV and take away his books when he teeth grinds. Okay, so he learns that he can only watch TV if he's not teeth grinding. Humming during nose humming, which is super loud when two adults are, just stop, look at him, and tell him to stop humming. When you're with him and he does these, just tell him to stop. Remind him to stop. When he's reading a book and if he's humming or doing anything else, you need to just be there and take the book away, wait, when he's finished, give it back, and so on and so forth. The nose humming being loud when he can't sleep made me think maybe he's doing it as a meditative type of thing where, so what initially comes to mind is that, not the teeth grinding. The teeth grinding becomes a pretty bad habit, as you said, and it just grows, and it's something that kids do, and sometimes it's for the purposes of just grinding their teeth. Sometimes it becomes something that they do because when you move your jaw around, your hearing changes. And so for me, it might also, again, go back to the hearing, which is the same as the nose humming, by the way. He's definitely doing stuff in order to alter his own hearing, no question. So this would be a child who, and this is like, I've had a lot of kids, older kids, recovered kids tell me things like, I used to, the sound of humming was very calming. The sound of, things in the background like air conditioner, etc., was very, very loud. I could hear it much more than I could hear conversational sounds, that sort of thing. So keep in mind that our kids generally have very different frequencies that they hear better than we do. So what I would suggest for him is during sleep, sound machines, and also Spotify, even if you have access to, let's say, Pandora or Spotify or one of these radio things, they all have meditation sounds. And one of the meditation sounds is a horror sound that's awful for me. Like, I can't even imagine that anyone would meditate. It's like this vibrating chime.
Right.
Do you know which one? It's
I
like,
do know.
And it goes up. That might actually be something he likes because it sounds like nose humming. It sounds like that, right?
Yeah.
And he might actually like that. So if you replace his own sound humming, nose humming with some sort of meditation sound, it probably will be calming for him. And also, a tool that you might want to give him, which might help him overall, is noise canceling headphones. A lot of people don't realize how amazing these things are. Like, they just, not just for our kids, but also they're commonly used for people with anxiety. There's a lot of, like, when you put on noise canceling headphones, whether or not you're listening to something, obviously if he's listening to calming stuff, it's even better. But let's say he is in a situation that is, but the sound is bothering him. It isn't that odd to pull out your noise canceling headphones, put them on, and just do your own thing for a few minutes. Make sure that it's not like all day long, so he's isolating himself from everyone, but absolutely is totally fine for him to learn to use those in situations where he needs to either kind of centralize himself, calm himself, or in situations where the environment sounds are bothering him.
Yeah, I've learned so much now that, my son was diagnosed with autism, about sensory processing and the ears.
Yeah.
And it has made me get to know myself better, because I'm somebody who cannot, I thought everybody was this way, but I can't turn down the sound on one thing in a room versus the other. I hear from other people that they can. So,
Right.
And it causes me anxiety.
So in other words, if there's a radio and people talking, you're both.
I'm like, because we'll be in the room where we watch TV in our house, and my husband or son will come in with their phone going, and then the other one will stand behind me and talk, and I turn the TV off now.
Yeah.
Because I know if I don't, my anxiety level.
Yeah.
And I will now, but always before I would just be like, "What's happening?" Because I couldn't realize what was happening. So I think it's got to be really hard for our kids who can't communicate it.
Absolutely.
I didn't know it for probably 50 years. I didn't know that was what was going on
Shannon,
with me.
that is so amazing that you observe those types of things, because we don't realize we get angry. We get anxious, we get angry, right? So the same kind of stuff happens to our kids 24/7, I think.
Yeah.
And they can't figure out that, the noise input is too much.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's not just sound input for them. A lot of times it's also visual input.
Lights and
sometimes it's visual and sound and tactile. They also feel like their skin is crawling. So I think a lot of the stuff that happens with our kids really has to do with their sensory input issues, and this sounds like one of those.
And to be able to dial down one of them with the noise canceling headphones, and one of the most freeing things that I think you've said on the show is that when you give your child headphones around the neck, they look like every other kid.
They do. There's nothing
socially
odd about them.
acceptable.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a whole phase where people were walking around with those headphones. Everyone in high school had one, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's a very socially acceptable thing. There are other socially acceptable things that help our kids too, in terms of just shutting out the world a little bit. And I think sometimes our kids need those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so try those things and let us know if that helps you at all. Josie wrote in on Facebook and said, "Wish this live stream was around when my daughter was in school." Josie, I wish it was too. And let me just tell you that, one of the reasons why this all happened was for conversations about what we both wish there were available for people. Because I always saw conferences that you could go to and hear these experts talk, and I couldn't get to the conferences.
Right.
How could I afford to go to the conference? Who was going to watch my kid? Where was my kid going to be?
Yeah.
would get mad when I would
Right.
see something about a conference. I would think, who are the people who can go to these things? So I'm glad that you're here and that you found us now, and hopefully we can help you with something now. Jessica wants to know, what do you recommend for my son waking in the middle of the night to find me? Every night he wakes up randomly to find me and goes right back to sleep. How do we get him to sleep in his bed throughout the night?
Oh. So, basically, so he just comes and finds and then goes back
And then
to
goes
bed?
back to sleep,
Right.
which is so much better than a lot of the kids who find mom and then are like, hey, now let's have a discussion.
Yeah. So I was about to give you a whole bunch of options. I was about to tell you, like, we've done sleep training where we will actually not let the child out of the room, right? And then that's kind of traumatic in some ways at first for the child, but then they actually fall asleep and they're fine. We've done sleep training where the parent will fade themselves out of the room so that gradually the child realizes the parent is fine and safe. But you know what? I just suddenly realized the easiest way to deal with this is just get, I think you just need 2 laptops, actually. You just need a computer and a laptop. You don't even need, put yourself on FaceTime so that he can see you overnight. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Or what
so
about a
he
baby
knows
monitor
you
where
are.
he
Yeah,
has
I was
the
going to say the new baby monitors that give you the visual.
video?
Just give him a visual of where you are. Gradually, he won't care after a while.
There you go.
He just needs to, I'm guessing that he
Yeah.
just needs to know you're there and he feels safe with that. And if that's the case, just give him, I come up with the FaceTime thing because that's what my son does. Like my son and his girlfriend who lives in England, we were just talking about, they never shut off their laptops, right? They have it on FaceTime the whole time. And it
Wow.
costs nothing.
Right.
And so it's just on. And so one of them sleeps.
Uh-huh.
So the lights are off, but if they should wake up, they can, like, if she wakes up in England, she'll look and Sonny's doing his thing or whatever it is.
How sweet.
And they check in. Yeah, it's almost like living together. It's very interesting, like
Wow.
what you're capable of doing nowadays.
Yeah.
It's very different. So that's what I would suggest is just give him contact, give him access. I don't know if you're someone who travels or something. I remember when I traveled, my kids were much younger and they had a lot of anxiety around me traveling.
Sure.
And I did a whole bunch of different types of things. Like, I've told you this, right? I would, like, if I was gone, this is for people who travel maybe, or if your child has this level of anxiety. If I was gone for like 3 days, and they were too young to understand, I'll be back on Thursday, you know?
Right.
So I would go to 99-cent store and buy 1 item for each child for each night.
Right.
So that they knew, so that my being gone was associated with toys,
Right.
which was a good thing. And also I would hang a bag, and this was like Monday night's bag, this was Tuesday night, and this was Wednesday night, and they would see it progressively getting less.
Right.
And then, of course, after the last bag, I was back.
A visual and meaningful reinforcing way of understing the passage of time.
Right.
Amazing.
So those types of things help. But
The
that sounds like
bedtime thing is hard.
anxiety.
I found the bedtime pass, and we've done a bunch of videos on the bedtime pass. We even have somewhere on our Facebook site, we have a thing that you can print out and cut out, a template that you can make a bedtime pass. And I found that
it's
to be
really
super
cool. Yeah,
effective.
it's awesome.
But,
So the
but it
concept-
won't fix it because he'll use the bedtime
this
pass
is-
once.
I
for
think this is a little different
Yeah.
because bedtime passes for kids that just kind of want to come and crawl into bed with you, or they want to be wandering the house or getting whatever.
They're
doing
like, I
something.
just need a drink.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
just have to get up for a second to get a drink. It's not a big deal.
That's for that kind of child, exactly. This sounds like anxiety only because he comes and sees you and then goes back to bed.
Right.
So he's just checking to make sure you're there.
Right.
So the thing with the bedtime pass that's very cool is that you just give the child a certain number of passes per week. You could start with 5, by the way, and then reduce them. And he then looks at his passes, and if he has a pass, he will go in the hall. If he doesn't, he won't. And it's crazy how effective it is.
Yeah.
It's so funny. But I don't know if that's the case where he's just wandering around or not wanting to sleep, or if it's just checking on you.
Yeah, it
If
sounds
it's
like he's
checking on
checking.
you, just let him see that you're in bed.
It's very sweet that he's checking. That's
Yeah.
a very cute little thing. She says, if I turn off the TV to solve, oh, no, this is the other mom. If I turn off the TV to solve the teeth grinding, he will scream and tantrum. I
Oh,
know
good.
because that happens when YouTube or other channels stop all of a sudden.
Great. Then you know you're working. It's working.
Ah.
So the screaming, let's talk about that for a minute. This is what's perfect about this situation. This gives us the opportunity to talk about this. This is really, really good stuff now. So he, when he screams and tantrums, if he could talk and if he wasn't that angry, what would he be saying? He'd be saying,
stop it. I want that. I need that.
Exactly.
What are you doing?
Right. And if he could understand, you would say, sure, you can have it, but no teeth grinding, right? And everything would be fine, and that would be the end of that. But the fact that there's not enough comprehension and not enough ability to express, he will now tantrum and so on. Now, why does he scream and cry? You know why? Because when he screams and cries, you give in and you turn the TV on again. So please, when he screams and cries, do not give in. No matter what it is, figure out when he's screaming and crying what he's trying to communicate, and don't let him have that by screaming and crying. He can have it if he verbalizes it. He can have it if he stops teeth grinding. So it's not like you're preventing him from having the TV. You're just preventing him from having the TV when he screams and cries for it. Okay, that's really important, because every behavior is controlled by the antecedents and consequences. Now, if he screams and cries and the consequence is he gets the TV, what he's learning is that screaming and crying was an effective form of communication. You don't want him to learn that. You want him to learn that screaming and crying is not an effective form of communication. So when he screams and cries, ignore him. Completely walk away. Let him scream and cry. It doesn't matter. When he's calmed down a little bit, go ahead and prompt him and say, would you like the TV? Why don't you ask for it? Say TV. And then he says TV, and give him the TV. If he starts to teeth grind again, shut it off again and say no teeth grinding, and show him so he starts to understand.
Yeah.
Don't let his behavior, his challenging behavior, scare you, though.
I think because we tend to be so verbal, we think they're not going to get it. And one of the things that changed my mind about everything was when we first started therapy, and they weren't doing a whole lot because they were working on compliance, but Peter Farrig, who you know I love dearly, would come to my house, and the first thing that he would do is he would sit and tear paper swords for the first few minutes, 2 of them, because my kid was into pirates. They had done the whole assessment thing and found out that he was pirate obsessed, loved Peter Pan. And so Peter would tear these 2 paper swords so that nobody would get a paper cut, right? He couldn't just cut them. He would have to hand tear them. And then he would take a sword and Jem would take a sword, and they would fight for a few minutes, and then Peter would freeze. And Peter would wait until Jem's eyes would cross his. And when his eyes crossed his, it was like turning on the toy, and Peter would fight, and Jem would be like, what's happening? I love it. I have this big fabulous genie in my house that's playing swords with me. And then Peter would freeze, and he would wait until Jem's eyes crossed his. He was teaching him eye contact in the most natural way that there is.
It's amazing.
And I remember in the beginning thinking, he's never going to get that, but he did. Yeah. He figured out, oh, that's what turns on this toy, is if I make eye contact. And it built rapport between them, and he, you know, he tried everything. He stomped and he yelled. I think he even tried to kick Peter, you know, to get him to do whatever, and nothing worked.
I love it.
Right? But when his eyes, and he realized, oh, well, that's all I have to do to get the toy to turn on? Of course I'm going to do that. We hate it when our kids cry and scream and whatever, but it takes a little while for them to get it, but you'll be surprised how quickly they get it. And they go, oh, you mean I can have it if I just ask you to turn the TV on? I can have it? And eventually he'll get, oh, but I don't get to teeth grind while I'm watching TV. Right. And he won't.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it works.
The fact that he does it with TV is the best thing. We teach kids to eat using the TV. Like kids who have they're on a gastro tube, right? So we will actually give 1 bite. We will, as long as the child's eating, we will keep the TV on. Right. As soon as they stop eating, we'll turn the TV off. Yeah. Like, so using the TV is a very good thing because you could turn it on and off. That's a very good motivator.
There's an episode of The A Word that's just exactly that.
Yeah,
And I love it because the dad, they explain the whole thing to him. He's you know, for 6 months they've been working on desensitizing the child to food because he's terrified. He cries when he sees a banana, right?
Yeah.
And they desensitize and they work up to, and dad's in the clinic and he's like, when are we going to do the food thing? When is the food thing happening? I've been waiting forever. I love the dad because he's just so angry, and I can relate to that. And they say, okay, no, it's this week. We're going to do the food thing. Here's the thing. He's going to take a bite of a preferred food, and he'll have the computer there so he can be watching the videos with kids that he loves. And if he's eating, great. But if he stops eating, you turn it off. And dad goes, are you kidding me? Are you for real? Like, I've been waiting for 6 months for this big intervention, and do you think I'm stupid? If that would have worked, don't you think I would have done this?
Seriously? He's like angry.
He's so angry.
That's so funny.
He's so cute. He's so angry, and he's like, these people. All right. They're like, would you just let us try? You know, I'm telling you, these BCBAs and therapists, what they have to put up with from
so
parents.
funny.
And they're like, would you just let us try? And he's like,
Who's
sure.
the supervisor with him at this time?
I think it was Sabrina at this time.
Yeah.
And she's like, would you just give us, are you willing to try it? And he's like, sure. You know, but they do the little confessional with him. And he's like, what a bunch of, you know, okay, whatever. And then, of course, his child does it and feeds himself for the first time ever. And you'd think that the dad would be like, this is miraculous. But he's like, why didn't you tell me 6 months ago then? You know, he's mad about that. These are the emotions. These are the emotions. But it does work. You just have to do it in all the steps, which is what I think, you know, we as the parents don't know what all those steps are until somebody teaches us. And you have to do the follow through for it. And it's very specific, and it can't be muddied up. So watch that episode of The A Word. It's really, it's worth it to watch the poor dad as he's like, whatever. And then it works.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the camera is on, and you get to see it work with Jack Riley, and it just looks like it's way too easy because they did all the steps beforehand.
Right. The thing also, though, Shannon, is that when it's our own child, and of course, and also when you're in it, the emotional aspect of hearing a child scream for hours, and then make it your own child scream for hours is just so draining. So that's where you have to just, like, that's why I say walk away. Like, try to be, of course, you're always watching your child, but, like, try to distance yourself, because it's so emotionally draining on the parent when the child is just screaming, tantruming, crying, etc., which is, by the way, the reason we turn the TV on. See, I don't want to get, like, too behavior analytic about it, but everything is because of how the consequence. He is crying because he knows that when he cries and screams, you're going to turn the TV on. Now, let's look at you for a minute. You turn the TV on because you are escaping his crying. Yeah. Everything we do is those 4 functions, one of them being he's trying to gain access to a tangible, you're trying to escape an aversive. Right. And those are the functions of life.
And we want to escape them crying. We don't,
that's what you're trying to escape. As a parent,
we don't ever want to do something that sets them off crying and being upset. So the act of turning off the television is really hard. But I always go back to when our kids were walking, when they were learning how to walk and they fell and they hit their head and whatever. We didn't go, oh, that's just too painful, stop. He's not going to learn how to walk.
Right.
Because we understood that was a process.
Right.
I'm just saying to you, we all need to get on board with this is a process too.
Very good.
He's only going to cry the 1 or 2 times, and then he won't do it. And if your gut knows that, then you won't feel bad about him crying that one time. Now, Mom wrote back in about the bedtime thing, and she said, thank you for the FaceTime idea, but I think I should elaborate a little more.
Okay.
When he comes to find me, he will climb into bed with me and falls asleep cuddled next to me. I'm a stay-at-home mom.
That is the key part of it, because the initial email gave me the impression that he's actually going back. No, now that's a very different intervention, and I'm really glad you wrote. So what you need to do is actually a completely different intervention. So you will now start sleeping in his room. So the easiest way I've found to deal with this, there's many things. You could do the pass. There's many different ways to do this, but the easiest for me that I found, and I don't know the age, but here's what you need to do, is just sleep in his room. Put a bed, put a single cot or a twin bed next to his bed, and you sleep there. Okay. Then the next night, move it like a foot away from his bed. You're still there. The next night, move it 2 feet away, 3 feet away, etc. And everything is fine. And then you will gradually get to the point where you're sleeping in the hallway. And then you will gradually get to the point where you're sleeping down the hallway. Now, what's very important is as soon as you're outside of the room, make sure that he has some sort of visibility to you being in the hallway. That's when it would be helpful to have a baby monitor or something so he knows. And if he should come out, do not let him sleep in your bed. You take him back, put him in his bed. Don't talk to him. Just take him back and he stays in his room. And then you very gradually shape yourself out until you're in your bed. But this way you kind of avoid the whole concept of having to fight it through. The biggest thing is, again, let's analyze this behavior here. He is trying to gain access. The reason he comes and sleeps in your bed is that it's become a habit, but basically he's gaining access to a tangible, and that tangible is you, is the comfort of being with mom in bed. He's avoiding being alone, which is fear. So he's trying to just get himself to a more comfortable place. Now, what you want to avoid that. So that means you don't want him to learn to come out and sleep with you, which means stop letting him sleep with you. Instead, what you need to do is make his room very, very cozy, comfortable, a place that gives him comfort. Read with him in his room, play with him in his room, put pictures of yourself in his room. Give him the ability to play music in his room, his favorite toys, stuffed animals, things that generally associate with comfort. Even maybe take a stuffed animal, put your perfume on it, leave it in his room, that sort of stuff, so that he starts to associate his room with security. And this is really important, guys. Sometimes we avoid dealing. This is like a lot of times we avoid because we're like, oh, he's only 3. And
plus, it's a lot of work to get a cot and put it next to the bed. And we go,
oh,
surely there's got to be a kinder, gentler, easier way on me.
Yeah.
I like my bed. I don't want to have to do that. But we postpone, and the month it would take to do that then becomes 6 years of us battling every night.
Absolutely. And sometimes I'll tell parents, you don't want to be dealing with this when he's 15.
Yeah.
Trust me, you don't. And before you know it, it gets there. And the other part of this is, yes, you're right. It is hard for you have a choice here, unfortunately. Either it's the cot or it's actually not letting him out of his room and hearing him screaming for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And by the way, that is an option. That's flooding. You can flood him, but
Nobody
is
likes
entirely
that,
up
though.
to you. Right. For me, I have found that the physical discomfort is preferable than hearing my child cry for 3 hours.
Right.
But regardless, whatever you decide to do, you cannot let him stay with you.
Yeah.
You just cannot let that happen, and that's the hardship.
We all think they're going to outgrow it. And I don't know a single person that really had somebody actually outgrow it. It had to push, to shove, whatever. But I love the idea of making a nest for them. We're starting to look at toys for our annual toy guide. And a couple of years ago, we did a whole line of night lights from Uncle Milton toys that are interactive, that have timers, they have remotes. The
moon one that you often...
that's Uncle Milton. I love the moon one. And they can put it on different phases.
Jem has that. Sonny had that when he was little. I love that thing.
Yeah, it's a fabulous. But they have grow lights for girls that are plants. They have ones that have for kids that are really into animals. It would be scary for me, but they have like safari noises. I wouldn't want to sleep with that, but they have ocean noises. They have things now that project on the ceiling. Uncle Milton. I absolutely. They're the ones that do the ant farm too.
Yeah.
They have a wonderful line of scientific toys, but they have a whole line of night lights that I really, really love, that you can have it be specific to your child. Some of them are fireworks, and some of them have timers, some of them have sound, some of them don't. So you really can mix and match. And they tend to partner with licensing from like Disney or someplace like that. So a couple of years ago there was one that was Jake and the Pirates. So it's things that the kids will like. So I absolutely, then they want to sleep in their room.
Right,
Then it's,
right.
oh, I get to have the
Absolutely.
remote. I get to have control. I get to,
Yeah.
absolutely love that. Okay, we also, Night Owl wrote in and said, how to get better in echoics. My child would echo when looking at books with me, but he would not do it if I put him in front of me to look at my mouth and repeat what I'm saying.
Well, why don't you, that's interesting. Why don't you practice it in front of a mirror and then gradually start getting yourself in front of him? So like you're both standing in front of a mirror. So he's actually looking at the mirror, and it's unavoidable that he will also look at you. And then start to actually get in front of him. But that's very interesting and unusual.
There's that doctor that we had on the show who's from England who talks about how some kids with autism, what they see in a face is vastly different than what we see.
Oh, there's no question.
And
Absolutely.
that, you know, we always want people to look at eyes and mouth, and for them, they're like they might be seeing something vastly different than what we see. It may not be gratifying to them.
Definitely. Well, it's definitely not, and it's not just not gratifying, but what we've learned is that it's very confusing because of the different number of expressions and the different movements that express those expressions, right? Like this and like all the different things we do with parts of our face. But in addition to that, another thing is that with kids with autism, it seems like sometimes their senses conflicts with each other. So if they're listening, it's hard for them to visually pay attention.
Yeah.
And if they're visually paying attention, it's hard for them to listen. So that's also, you know, like we talk about eye-hand, but this is more like hearing and eye, you know, and so that might be the issue as well for this child.
Okay, so interesting though, but to start with a mirror.
I would stand in front of a large mirror, the two of you, and keep doing echoics, and then gradually start to get eye contact.
Okay. I want to go to this question about a nonverbal 3-year-old. My son just turned 3 and is nonverbal with ASD and other health conditions. School wanted to start teaching him with PECs, but he is fascinated by the icons and any kind of paper or wrapper and just plays with them. Should we do sign language instead? He is nonverbal.
Right. So I can't really... So, okay, so my preference is PECs. I'm a PECs person as opposed to as a sign language. And I'll tell you why. 2 reasons, really. With any kind of picture exchange system, you have, well, many reasons actually that I think it's better. One is with sign, you must learn a language that not everyone else knows. And so no matter what you learn, others can only communicate with you if they know it too. Right. And that's a very small population.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that sign is, there's a thing called recall versus recognition. I have to explain that a second. So recall, so let's say you're taking a test, and when you take a test, they ask you to write like a paragraph answer, right? That's recall. All of your answer has to come from your own recall. Everything that's in your brain, you have to remember it.
Right.
Recognition is a multiple choice answer. So it's like, here are some options, recognize the one that you think is the correct answer.
Right.
Obviously, recognition is easier because I've given you all the answers, you just pick one, as opposed to remembering it from scratch, right? Yeah. So always, anything that allows recognition, it's easier. PECs allows recognition because there's a bunch of visuals, you pick the right one.
Right.
Whereas sign is recall. So you have to come up with the correct sign for more, as opposed to PECs where, oh, it's this one. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, teaching PECs is easier. Now, here's a whole nother reason. With PECs, you can actually very easily move to a augmentative system which can then generate sound, and then you're done. Like if the child remains nonverbal forever, you still can move away from PECs, go to keyboarding, and that is one of the communication sources of even I wanted to say the future, but I wanted to say now.
Right.
I mean, look at how our kids communicate. They're all sitting at the same table and they're texting.
Yeah.
So that becomes a much more socially appropriate and normal type of thing than actually doing sign, which very few people have access to or know. So that's all said. Go ahead.
He's 3. Is he since paper is a fascination, is it too young to switch to an iPad?
I would always start, you can start with the visual icons that are on an iPad. Certainly, that's actually, you're right, because they now have them on the iPad,
Right.
the full icons. You can actually go there right now and you'll avoid the whole thing. You're absolutely good point. So I was going to say, hey, if you want to do it, this is school, I think. So they might, if you purchase an iPad for him and he can keep it in school, they might not allow you, I don't know. But if they do allow you, make sure you buy one of these mega cases that are heavy cases that protect from
It's going to
dropping
cost you
and
almost as much as the iPad costs. It's worth it.
It's very much worth it.
I'm clumsy and I drop the iPad at least 3 times a week. And
all
kids
our kids
will throw.
Yeah. All of our therapists have these cases
Yeah.
because they will, otherwise their iPad is done.
Yeah.
But you should get that, have the school allowed. That's much easier than laminating the paper.
Oh,
you
yeah.
could also laminate. They could laminate the paper so that he can't play with the paper.
Okay. And
So
tear
that's
it up.
easy too, right?
Okay.
But I mean, essentially, I strongly recommend it. Now, also what I want to say is that being nonverbal at 3 does not mean he's nonverbal forever. Like, it is very important that if they are doing a nonverbal communication system like SPECS, they don't stop trying to teach language. This is so important. Both also for parents. Parents always think, okay, I'm going to go the nonverbal path. No. If he's making any sounds, then they definitely should be working on putting those sounds together to produce language, speech. If he's not making sounds, then a speech path should be working on getting him to make sounds. Like, it is important not to give up at 3. I don't know that I ever go full nonverbal unless I've done maybe 2 or 3 years of trying.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting a couple of years ago because we were talking about that, and a mom wrote in and said, but 80% of kids with autism don't talk. And it was a mom of an adult on the spectrum. And I went and I looked that up, and when her child was diagnosed, that was the truth. That it was actually a little bit higher. It was like 13% of the kids were talking. That number completely flipped. It's now 80% of kids with autism, and it's a little bit higher than that now, actually speak.
Yeah.
And it's because we've gotten so much better and people don't give up. So.
Yep.